Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Rim Runner with Bob Baskerville and Ryan Shumpert.
Welcome. Time for another episode of the RTI Rim Runner, where we cover college basketball, not just with the Vols, but what else is going on in the SEC and around the country. I'm Bob Baskerville, joined as always by Ryan Shumpert, the two probably biggest hoop nerds on the RTI team, at least. Well, we got a lot of guys that like college basketball, but we were texting last night between each other, which, by the way, I was at a birthday dinner for a little while with my wife. I was still following college basketball, so don't tell her, though. Ryan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back on here, and another good week of college basketball games, and obviously a dicey, I guess it's just been one game for Tennessee since two, because we talked on the morning in the Syracuse game last week. So a bad week for Tennessee, and stuff to hash out there, and then just some overall college basketball stuff as we get closer and closer to Christmas.
Definitely. Yeah, man, before you know it, I mean, some conferences have already started in conference play. SEC won't start till after the holidays, but man, it's going to be here before we know it. We appreciate you paying attention to our show, watching it, listening it, however you consume it. We're available. If you're watching us on the Rocky Top Insider channel on YouTube. Please make sure you like and subscribe. We sure love the support and really appreciate that. Also, you may listen to us as a podcast, which is great as well. We are available wherever you listen to your podcasts. So just do us a favor, make sure you download us there so it's part of your regular routine. We're here pretty much every week. We definitely have a lot to talk about on the show today. We're kind of reaching that quarter-mile marker for the college basketball season, and we're definitely seeing some things take shape for a lot of teams. And we're also seeing some teams that are still searching for their identity, including our guys on Rocky Top. So let's get to it. And we'll focus first on the opening tip, which is regarding Tennessee hoops. After a week that we discussed right here would be very, very critical for the Vols, they come out of that week mired now in a 3-game losing streak. Additionally, they lose a key player for the rest of the season, and now they face a true gut check game as non-conference play wraps up. Ryan, we don't need to go through all the details of the Syracuse game, which is a week old, and then the Illinois game that just happened a few nights ago. But I do want to focus a little bit on that Illinois loss, because that was against a very, very top-tier team. And the Vols were in that game, hanging in there for quite a while. Illinois made some adjustments at halftime, and lo and behold, it felt like we got exposed in some places. I just wanted to get, before we dig in a little bit, what was your big takeaway on this game in terms of what's becoming a clear point of concern for this Tennessee basketball team?
Yeah, I think there's a number you could go to. I guess offensively, to me, I would focus on just that Tennessee needs more from Nate Ament, and to a lesser extent, Jacoby Gillespie. And if they're not going to get more, I think they need to tinker with the usages and trying to get the ball inside more to get JP Estrella and play through those Jalen Carey and JP Estrella more inside, and try to play a little bit more inside out, just because from an efficiency standpoint, Tennessee's just not getting enough from those two guys. And look, I'm from how it's affecting the team right now, I'm willing to give Jacoby a little bit more of a pass, because I think they're just asking him to do a ton. And Nate, you can give him a little bit more of a pass because he's a young guy and he's still figuring things out. But I think Jacoby's much closer to giving Tennessee really good minutes and really good production. So, I'd say that's it on the offensive side. I wrote about it yesterday, the leadership aspect. I think you've seen now in the Kansas and Illinois losses. Tennessee kind of lets the game get away from them there in the final 10 minutes of the game and didn't really have any sort of answer. I think you do have to give some credit to the Syracuse deal where Tennessee fell behind by double digits early in the second half of that game and fought back. But still a little bit of a worrisome trend. And then, defensively, it's just as we see more and more and sample size gets larger, it's just more and more clear that this is not a defense that's at the level that we've grown accustomed to these last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that's for sure. One of the things I noticed in the Illinois game, and it's hard to describe, I thought Jimmy Dykes, who was on the call, I thought he made a pretty good effort at doing it. Illinois' game plan, and this wasn't just in the second half, it was more pronounced in the second half, but I saw it earlier in the game too, and that was it was somehow out of their transition plays. It's like they forced matchups, I guess you would call it. It's matchups for our defense, though, where it felt like we would look truly lost. I mean, they just flashed guys out when they were in transition down the court, and it felt like, to your point, what you were just talking about specifically on the perimeter, they just had a guy open like all the time, and that is so off-brand for Tennessee basketball to see that happening. And you're right, we don't have Zakai Ziegler and Jemai Mashak. It's a different cast of characters all the way around. But that's one of those, again, we've always talked about Coach Barnes, and he preaches it about controlling the controllables. And I think he views defense as one of those, and it feels like we just don't have that right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was one instance, I can't remember exactly what the play was, but it's kind of as the game was starting to get away from Tennessee. I think they were maybe down somewhere 2-5, where I can't remember. It might have been the JP left-handed hook right in front of the rim, or maybe one of Jalen Carey's. It was a good look around the rim, but by no means a wide open layup, but a shot you have to make in that type of game. And then Tennessee, I can't remember who it was, lost somebody in transition, and it led to a wide open three where it just felt like that was a critical error. And look, I do think some of it is probably some mental breakdowns. But I was glad Amari Abram came out and said it in his post game, and he was just speaking specifically to the game. He just said, we couldn't stay in front of the ball, and to me, that's been the glaring issue that I've seen too frequently. Is Tennessee, besides Bishop Boswell, the guys on the perimeter just cannot stay in front of the ball. And we're spoiled by what we're used to seeing. The clip that Tennessee could stay in front of the ball, but to me, it's a big issue, and I think part of the deal is Tennessee plays these two big lineups and sacrifices some spacing on the offensive end. You would hope that one of the counter punches or areas that can be a strength because of that is you'd be better defending the rim than Tennessee has. And granted, some of those guys aren't huge rim defenders. It's going to get worse from that standpoint with Cade Phillips now out for the year. But it doesn't feel like Tennessee's getting that punch back as much on that end of the court. And I thought Illinois continuously kind of killed Tennessee on how Tennessee was guarding inbound passes and able to get either Tomislav or Merkovich with Nate Ament switched on him and getting just the way those plays were unfolding, being able to catch the ball pretty low and then just put a shoulder into Nate, who's obviously not very physically strong at this point in his career, and got a lot of easy baskets that way. So I do think there were some areas where Illinois exploited issues with Tennessee that you give credit to Brad Underwood and his staff. But some of it does feel like it's just physical limitations that this Tennessee team has defensively.
Yeah. On my radio show last Friday, we had on Mike Latulip, who's with Field of 68, and also he covers Illinois basketball. He used to play for the Illini way back when. And I was watching some of his film study post game because I thought he had some really, really good points when we talked with him in advance of the game. And he's been a big fan of Tomislav, and he did a little film study on him in the Tennessee game. And we were watching it in real time, but it really put in perspective after the fact how much he kind of worked us over inside and out, right? I mean, he had a great game against Tennessee. And if, like you said, he got in some mismatches against Nate, and that just felt like we never had an answer.
No, you're absolutely right. It felt like, I thought this was especially the case in like the first 15 minutes of the game, that it just felt like Illinois And to that point, a lot of it was with their bigs and with Tomislav and a little bit of Merkovich. It just felt like they got the ball where they wanted inside.
Right.
Some of that was being unable to defend off the dribble with the guards. And then I thought Tennessee was better to end the first half there. And then in the second half, Illinois just shot the ball really well from three in the second half. So not that issue just disappeared, but Illinois kind of went to that well a little bit less, I guess you would say. So I agree. And again, that's to the point of when Tennessee's playing from a lineup standpoint, the type of lineups they are, you can't be getting pushed around inside because you're going to have other issues defensively and you're going to have other issues offensively that needs to be a strength. That needs to be something you can count on. And, just thinking off the top of my head, I'm not really sure anyone in the SEC can attack Tennessee the way Illinois did. Florida's really good in the front court, but it's not like they don't throw the ball inside. They do some to Condon. They don't do much to Chinulu. So it's a different look that Tennessee's not going to see a ton. It's really a look they saw a lot if you go back to the last time they lost 3 straight games, which was 2 years ago when they faced Zach Edey, Hunter Dickinson, and Armando Baycott.
Right.
So what they saw a lot that year, but as some of those guys graduated out, it doesn't feel like we're seeing that as much in college basketball. So you wonder if it's going to be as long-term as a concern. That was the thing that just showed up that whole year. Tolu Smith gave him issues at Mississippi State.
Yes.
Obviously, you end up losing to EDU and Purdue in the NCAA tournament again. But certainly that's the strength of Illinois. And you felt like Tennessee would be more suited to not dominate or just cut the tap off there, but would be able to hold up a little better than they did.
Yeah. Yeah, you talked a little bit about Jacoby Gillespie, and it feels to me, so I wanted to get your take on this. Do we think that, I'm going to do a multiple choice here, Ryan, is it A, Jacoby's just trying to do too much and we're too reliant on him and him only in the backcourt? Is it B, that teams maybe see option A and they are specifically hunting him out, swarming him, which makes life harder, obviously? Or is it... I think I might know the answer. Is it C, all of the above?
Yeah, I think it's C. It's a little bit of both. And look, that's where I said this to somebody, I think earlier this morning, that Tennessee, for offensively to work with spacing, Nate has to shoot better from the perimeter. Like Tennessee, see if I can find it here quickly. Tennessee, I think, expected him to at least be shooting in the 35% range from three. And to this point in the season, he's shooting 29%. And his shots, I think, slow to get up too. It's kind of a long release, so that gives teams, they can sag off more and get out and still get a contest on him. And Bishop Oswald's shooting the ball well, but he's not going to be a guy that shoots a ton of threes. So teams are just able to sag off those guys on the wings and try to get into the driving lanes. And Nate has not been initiating a ton of offense right now, or not super effectively. So Jacoby's just handling the ball a lot, and a lot of that falls on him. And that's where I'd say I think it's a couple things I'd like to see more offensively. I'd like to see them throw the ball down low to the big men more, just to take a little bit of that pressure off Jacoby. Because look, JP and Carey are both pretty good passers too. And then too, I'd like to see Felix and JP, and we've seen them do it some, but I'd like to see those guys take at least 1 3 every game. Just to try to give defenses something that they have to respect. And, I really wouldn't be opposed to them taking more than that, if we're talking top of the key threes or maybe a corner three, but just a little something else that can spread out the defense. So at least make opponents think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it just me, or did it feel like there was at least once, maybe twice, where JP had an open look for a three at the top of the key and just, passed on doing it?
Yeah, I think he shot the one and made it, but then Dwayne Brown got called beforehand for an offensive foul. I think part of the balancing act is they're getting that shot a lot as a trailer, and I don't think, and I don't blame him for it, but I don't think Rick wants them taking that shot 8 seconds into the shot clock. So I think, there's been some instances of that where they've been open early in the shot clock, and it feels like, I would assume they're being instructed, or they're saying it's fine to shoot it, but let's work the clock and see if we can get a better look first.
Yeah. Back to Nate Ament for a second. You're right. I think and I know you were just like me and so many others that had this feeling through summer workouts that, man, this guy, he can be a factor from three, and the mechanics look good and everything. It's just not falling, but we do need more from him. As a matter of fact, in that Illinois game, he was not the best true freshman on the floor. He was the 5-star freshman, but obviously, and we talked about this guy last week, Keaton Wagler from Illinois. He seems to be catching the eyes of everybody nationally, almost not quite like Kingston Flemings has, but he had another fantastic game. He led Illinois in scoring last night against Ohio State, and his line against Tennessee, I think it was like 16, 8, and 5, and some key threes. I mean, and Merkovich is a true freshman too. I mean, those guys were better than Nate, frankly.
Yeah, and I mean, Wagler's like a borderline 4-star. I think he was.
Yeah.
So he's played really well. I'm blanking. What was the kind of a very similar build? Illinois had a 5-star guard last year who was a one and done. Remember who I'm talking about?
I do. No, his name escapes me, but yeah, very.
See if I can find it.
Very slight.
Will Riley.
Will Riley. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he almost feels like, very similar, but maybe even a guy does a little bit more on the defensive end and on the glass than Riley did. So, yeah, he hit 2 of those shots, big shots early in the second half when it kind of felt like Illinois was starting to take control. And we were talking about that a little bit off air. Illinois is just impressive. It feels like they have 4 or 5 guys on any given night that can be their best player. I mean, Stojakovic, I think, scored 4 or 5 points in that game.
Yeah.
Kylan Boswell, who, he played well, but he didn't by any means go off in that game or have one of his better games. And then he did get banged up a little bit in the first half and probably played a little fewer minutes than he normally would. But they just have a bunch of different ways they can attack you. And for a team that isn't as solid as Tennessee is defensively right now, they really weren't able to handle it.
Yeah, it was a tough one for sure. And to your point, I hadn't thought of that. I don't know if Tennessee will see much of a game plan like that throughout the SEC. So that's some consolation. But yeah, man. I mean, the last thing I'll say about Wagler is it blows my mind. I think I heard them say on TV that he only got like maybe 2 or 3 Power 4 conference offers. That's incredible. I mean, hats off to Illinois for sniffing him out.
Yeah, that is really impressive. And I mean, for him to be helping them this much, and he's started to play better and better the last couple of games. And like you said, I think he had a really nice game last night too. But from the jump this season, he's been a guy that's clearly been a big part of the plan. And Brad Underwood and the staff really found gold there, it feels like.
Definitely. Well, let's move on to the next topic that's tied to Tennessee, and it certainly impacts the way forward for this team. You reported on it earlier this week, Ryan, that Cade Phillips, and we've seen him in that shoulder harness for so long, and we've wondered really what the status was. Well, now we know. Has he already had the surgery? Do you know?
I do not know.
Yeah, he's either had it or he is destined for shoulder surgery, and he is out for the year. I think my question to you on this is, first of all, Cade brings a lot of energy, and we talk about perimeter defense. He's been a factor there too. Offensively, he's been not great this season, so I'm not as worried about that. However, guy was averaging 17 minutes a game, meaningful minutes, part of the starting 5. What do you think would be the most logical plan for backfilling those minutes? I mean, we obviously have options, and sometimes I don't want to say this is a happy development, but there's part of me that thinks that maybe we had a bit of a log jam there, and it might force our hand to give some more minutes to the other guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tennessee's at least, it feels like largely equipped to handle it.
Yeah.
I think Jalen Carey slides into the starting spot, which he did in the Duke game, which he did, and I forget now what bye game was Tennessee's first of the year. I think Mercer maybe, which he did in that game too. And then, probably Dwayne Brown's probably the one that sees the most minutes increase. But, he played 22 minutes at Syracuse, 10 against Rutgers, 9 against Illinois. I don't think he played in that Houston or Kansas game. So he's the guy that feels like probably becomes a more consistent 10-minute-a-game guy most nights out. So he's the one that'll get probably the most increase in opportunities. And, I guess the thing that I wonder is just from on certain nights, and Louisville could be one here coming up, does Tennessee play Nate a minute 4 more and try to have a little bit more defensive versatility? Because Carey and Brown, very good players, and like Brown's long-term ceiling, and obviously Carey has been arguably Tennessee's best front court player in these games that have mattered, but not super versatile defenders who you feel great about on the perimeter. So I think that's where, in some matchups, you could really feel Cade's loss, and I wonder if Tennessee, maybe plays some more of these 4-guard lineups now that they might not have otherwise.
JP Estrella, I think, factors into this conversation in terms of, I just want to get your take, obviously, because we know he's been battling some injuries. He did play in the Illinois game only about 7 minutes. He's averaging about 12 to 13 minutes per game. I just feel like that is going to be critical. It's critical now, but I mean, certainly by the time we hit SEC play, we got to get more minutes from him. And I'm just starting to worry, is there always going to be something with JP as far as injuries?
Yeah, and I don't know how much the injuries, I do think the injuries limited him a bit on Saturday night. I think Dwayne Brown checked in before him, which to me is a little bit of a sign of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just worry about him staying healthy, and it becomes a lot more important now, where in the past, when earlier this season where he missed a game, you didn't feel like, obviously you wanted to have him if you were Tennessee, but it didn't feel debilitating by any means, I guess I would say. And now it feels like you're all of a sudden going to be pretty thin if that is the case. So they need him, and look, they need him. I think they need him to be better on the defensive end, need to be better rebounding the basketball too when he is out there.
Speaking of minutes, and this has little to do with how we backfill for Cade Phillips' absence, but what do you make of the situation at this point? Amari Evans gets 10 minutes in the Illinois game. Troy Henderson got no minutes, and we've talked about, you and I are kind of bullish on Troy for the long haul. Ethan Berg only gets a couple of minutes against Illinois. It just feels like that's a roller coaster ride with him. Do you think there is the prospect that Amari is going to continue to get even more minutes than he got in that Illinois game?
To me, it feels like when he got minutes for the most part in that Illinois game was when Bishop Boswell was in foul trouble.
Okay.
So to me, it feels like when they want defense, they're going to him. Amari Abram, I think, is really good with his hands and getting deflections and some steals, but it does feel like he struggles to stay in front of guys. And look, I think he's a lot more workable and not to suggest other guys aren't playing hard, but to me, there's never a moment where I see Amari Abram out there, even when he does get blown by, where I'm like, he's not ready or he's not playing hard, and he's giving them more on offense than anybody else is at that position. So, but just to say, there's a little bit more athleticism there with Amari Evans, and it does feel like as Tennessee struggles to defend the ball at this point in the season, Rick is putting all the more an emphasis on getting the guys out there he trusts defensively, and part of that, Berg's just been borderline unplayable in these games against anybody with a pulse. So his stock is definitely dropping right now, and we'll see. Maybe he figures some things out as it goes on. But he had a turnover in 3 minutes the other night. He just doesn't look very fluid handling the ball and is struggling on the perimeter defensively.
Yeah, it's. I had a lot of high hopes for him, honestly, early in the season. But boy, I don't know, man. It's that's a tough one. You can just tell too, the type of play he's delivering right now is that's like the bane of Rick Barnes' existence, man. That will drive him nuts. So that's why it correlates to 3 minutes played the other night.
Yeah, and I think that ties into some of the offensive issues too, where Jacoby ideally could play more off the ball, and you can run him off screens, and you can get him in more situations where it's comfortable for him to hunt for shots from beyond the arc. But Ethan Berg's the guy that it's very clearly been the plan for him to be the backup point guard. And when he struggles, it's it puts more on Jacoby. And I think if and when Nate starts to play better, you probably have him run more point guard. But when he's already struggling, I don't think they want to put a lot more on his plate right now. So. That's kind of another issue that I think has bled in or, presented itself for Tennessee offensively right now and how much they're putting on Jacoby Gillespie.
Yeah. So the path forward for this team, let's talk about that for a second, because we're already seeing some projected regression for the Vols. I mean, you look first at the AP poll, the rankings, they dropped from 13th to 20th, which you kind of expected. Currently 18th overall in KenPom. As a matter of fact, KenPom put out his projection for the season for Tennessee, and he's got them finishing, I believe, 20-11, 10-8 in the conference. They're 18th in Bart Torvik. They're 33rd in the net now. Ryan, is this like the blunt reality for this team in terms of that's not floor, man, that's ceiling? I mean, what do you think here?
No, I mean, not ceiling. And like the net stuff, I don't put much credence in at this point as far as it really mattering. It's not a predictive, tool. So, yeah, do I think Tennessee is around the 20th best team in the country right now? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Could that be the reality? 100%. That could be who this team is in that range, or heck, even a little bit worse. But no, I mean, I think they can figure some things out and be better. I think it's hard not to look at Nate Ament and Jacoby Gillespie and think that it's very realistic for those guys to play better and Tennessee to be a better team. And look, that's why I can't remember exactly the phrase you used. But Tuesday against Louisville feels like a bit of an inflection point game. You win that game, you take care of South Carolina State and whoever the other bye game is, Gardner-Webb, going into SEC play, then you're going to be 10-3 entering conference play, and you're going to look back and say, shouldn't have lost that Syracuse game. But other than that, everything's been pretty understandable. You're going to have two marquee wins, two losses that were largely competitive games to good teams and neutral sites in Kansas and Illinois. And you're going to say, all right, you lost one you shouldn't have, but this team's not far off from where we thought they were. So to me, that feels like a huge game. And all the more so because, and I will say, as you talked about KenPom and their projection, the SEC is worse. It's not what it was. KenPom's still pretty high. We talked about it a little bit with Kevin on the show last week, but just Florida's 15th, Georgia's 25, Auburn's 29, Kentucky, who's obviously looked terrible, they're still 20th in KenPom. So the KenPom, when it's doing its projections, it's still higher on the league, at least from top to bottom, the night in, night out aspect of it. But the point I was going to make is that Louisville game feels big because outside of Alabama and Vanderbilt and maybe Florida, I don't know that Tennessee's going to have a ton of opportunities to get these marquee wins in SEC play. You can build a good resume and get good wins, but when you're talking about like those quad 1A wins that are very, very top notch, Louisville feels like as gettable of one Tennessee's going to have on the remainder of the schedule getting that game at home.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would say the one SEC team I might add into that would be Arkansas, right? I mean, because it feels like they're playing really well too. But yeah, you're right.
I'm with you, but it is funny. I think, let's see if I can find it. Only 28th on KenPom. So it's funny to me to how much lower because I would think they look better than Tennessee. I think they look way better than Kentucky. I think they look just as good as Florida. But obviously a little bit of a disconnect with how they view it, and good for Tennessee to get them in the opener. You always want those Calipari teams early in SEC play.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think maybe some of what's happening with myself in this too is a little bit of recency bias, right? We're just watching what we're not accustomed, to seeing Tennessee go on any sort of extended losing streak, and we're saying 3 games is an extended losing streak for them. I was watching, I know you were last night too, some of the games at the Garden for the Jimmy V Classic. And I was watching those games and I was like, you kind of talked me off the ledge a little bit, because I think I texted you going, and particularly in that Florida UConn game, I was like, man, it feels like we're so far behind those teams. And you were kind of like, nah, not so much. I mean, and for you saying that, because you're usually, it's usually the tables are turned, you're usually a little more jaded on this stuff than I am, but you're probably right. It's like, it's just what you were saying. It's like there's room to grow here, and I gotta not get sucked into the notion of, hey, it's a long season, a couple losses. This is not like football. That's what we all fall into that trap of, it's like football season where a loss or two and you're cooked. That's not the case here.
No, it's not. And I'd go back to, we're talking about 2 years ago, Tennessee loses 3 games early. I as a whole better opponents because Syracuse is, a lot better than or a lot worse than that North Carolina team was. And
Sure.
Tennessee gets things going and wins the SEC and makes it to the Elite Eight. Now, I don't expect Nate Ament to turn into Dalton Connect, which was obviously a great equalizer. I feel like, just speaking for myself, maybe this is, again, you get blinded by the recency of it. I feel like everybody was more positive coming out of that 3-game losing streak than this one, and I think for good reason. But to that point, Tennessee's been here before. They can get out of this and still be in a good spot. But yeah, not to oversimplify it, I do think a lot of it rides on Nate, because no one on this team is there a bigger gap in how good he can be and how he's playing right now than is the case for Nate Ament.
Yeah. Yeah, the last thing I'll say, and then we'll move on to kind of a more national view, but I was saying this on the radio yesterday, that I remember looking at social media, and it was only, 2 short weeks ago, we beat Houston, and all the commentary, from fans and everyone else is, this Tennessee team, this is as complete and diverse and dangerous a lineup as we've seen with a Rick Barnes team. And now there's so much chatter of the buzz term. I'm sure you've seen it a lot. I try not to use it, but I'm using it here because I keep hearing it. Is the buzz term is roster construction. This roster construction is just a total failure, and all these other things. And it blows my mind that in really 2 weeks' time, the fan base, it was less than that. It was really off the heels of the Illinois game. So many people, and maybe I got sucked into that a little bit. It's like the sky is falling. And again, just got to remember, long season, a lot of games to play. I'm sure Rick is not throwing in the towel. We're going to be all right.
Yeah, and look, the roster construction thing, I'm glad you bring it up.
Yeah.
And I could probably rant on it. And I don't think all of it's off base. Like,
Sure.
I find it more pleasing, and I think offense is generally easier when you're playing 4 shooters out there.
Yep.
And your spacing is better. I would also say, look, a lot of teams, and I will go to Michigan, who is by far the best team in the country right now with how they're playing. They are a buzzsaw. They start 2 guys who have taken a combined 9 3-pointers this season.
Yeah.
So, you can play 2 non-shooters and still be good offensively. St. John's did it St. John's played 3 non-shooters for most of last year. They were a 3 seed. Michigan State made the Elite Eight with the worst 3-point shooting team in all Power 5 last year. And they're a better 3-point shooting team this year, but still not a very good one. Still very similar to Tennessee. And are a top 10 team, winning a lot of games. Well, I think that Duke game was their first loss over the weekend. So, look, I it's not to say that none of that stuff is fair. Some of those criticisms are fair. I just think you can still play this way with the way this roster was constructed and still be a good offensive team and be a really good team. That's where I almost go back to what I said, I don't know, a while back now, where it's the rim protection. To me, that's disappointing. If you're going to build your team this way, you need to be better at defending the rim than Tennessee has been to this point in the season.
Yeah, Arizona, the current number 1 team on the AP poll, they are not shooting many threes at all, but again, they're making it work inside on defense and everything else, things that we're not doing. And the very last thing I'll say is, again, when I was communicating with Mike LaTulip after the Illinois-Tennessee game, the first thing he said was, he goes, "I'm sure you guys have heard it, but you're missing. You need an effective threat at the wing from a shooting perspective." And, he was saying, not a revelation, but I see it. So, we're even more sensitive to that. So that's real. So like you said, there are parts of this, not like we didn't try with, trying to get Rodney Rice and Duke Miles and Isaac McNeely, but now we got to roll with what we got.
To that point, I'm glad you bring up Arizona. Another example. Arizona's starting front court has attempted 5 threes this season. And their 2 highest usage players are Koa Pete and Tobe Awaka, who have attempted 6 total threes. Tobe is the only one that's made one of that group. He's 1 of 2 from deep, which I don't think we watch enough Tobe to know we weren't necessarily seeing a perimeter threat coming.
No, that's funny. Well, that's a good way for us to pivot into our other big thing for today, and that is we got another week of college basketball in the books, and wanted to just do some takeaways. Ryan touched on this a few minutes ago, but I do think it hits home for us. And man, the problems with Kentucky only continue to grow. Blown out by Gonzaga last Friday night. I mean, blown out, getting booed off the court by their fan base in Nashville. They have tough games ahead with Indiana, who's no easy out at this point, and then St. John's with Rick Pitino. And so my point there is if they lose that game to Pitino, you know what's going to happen with the fan base. Now, we've just talked about Tennessee. We have our own problems to address, but sure feels like, Ryan, the situation in Lexington, I've seen a lot of articles, Will Warren and others. I don't think there's an immediate fix in sight either for these guys.
No, I mean, it's, you want to talk roster construction issues. Some of it's
Yeah.
what we're talking about with Tennessee, where it's even less from a shooting standpoint of what they have on that team, and just not a ton of guys that can create. And frankly, the roster was built to be really good defensively, which is a change in tune or a change in plan for Mark Pope, and
Sure.
that's it. They have not been, and some of that is the injuries aspect, but they have not been, and they've been, some of it seemingly very lackluster effort. I know he last night. They killed, I think it was North Carolina Central, some sort of North Carolina directional school, and I think Brandon Garrison got benched because Mark Pope wasn't happy with his effort. So major issues there. And you mentioned the 2 non-conference games. I'll say it'll be interesting when they play St. John's, because I think, obviously Pitino has been very, very supportive of Pope, and he played for him. It'll be fun to see Pitino kind of spin stuff, and I'm sure he'll be doing a lot of PR leading into that game and afterwards for Pope, and then kind of building on your point, you get to SEC play and have fun. First game in Coleman Coliseum against Alabama for Kentucky.
Yeah,
it's quite the SEC opener.
Yeah, and I mean, when your best player, Otega Owe, I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of the stuff too, some of the video clips of his effort level is minimal, man. It's something's really amiss there, man. I don't know what's going on, but again, we've got our own problems to address with Tennessee. So let's hope. Here's hoping with Kentucky they continue to struggle figuring it out, because we could use the help. I wanted to talk for a minute about Iowa State. Now, for those of you who know me, I grew up in Indiana. I grew up a Purdue fan. I'm more of a Vol fan at this point. But I pay attention when Purdue's playing. They were the number 1 team in the nation last week. They felt like they had earned that. But man, Ryan, it feels to me like Iowa State looks like a team that, I know it was based on the whole point differential system out in Vegas, but sure feels to me like they got overlooked, because they looked pretty damn complete against Purdue this past weekend.
Yeah, it was eye-opening, because what they did in Vegas was impressive. Yeah. But St. John's has kind of looked a little shaky at times, so it was like good win, but you're not thinking this is one of the best teams in the country because of it. Creighton's, I don't think, is very good this year. They got thrashed at Nebraska the other night, and then they were kind of the subject of the not only falling out, like you said, at the top of they were the lone team that went 2-0 and didn't make the 2 top games, but then they weirdly got scheduled Syracuse, who went 0-2 in their first 2 games. Like, why are they playing Syracuse and not Alabama? So it was like they look good, and I would even go back to early in the year. I watched a good bit of the game against Mississippi State, and they drilled them up in the Dakotas one of the first weeks of the year. And this is a take I have, and maybe we get into. I think Mississippi State I might pencil in as the worst team in the SEC. So it was like that. I just didn't really take a whole lot from it. So it's like, yeah, they look good. This is going to be a top couple seed team, but it's wait and see. And to do what they did to Purdue was just eye-opening, jarring. I mean, any sort of phrase you want to use. And it was a close game at half. Honestly, it was a much more dramatic version of the Tennessee-Illinois game. It felt like, where it was just in the second half they absolutely jumped on them, and forcing 15 turnovers. For Purdue, you just don't see that a lot with Braden Smith and company. So just looking at their KenPom right now, they're 28th nationally in offensive turnover rate and 2nd nationally in defensive turnover rate. That's a pretty good formula to win a lot of games if you can force turnovers and take care of the basketball like that.
Yeah, the thing I didn't see coming there is one of their calling cards. They're great at just smothering you, but They shot the three well in that game. I don't know if that's consistent with how they've done it all season, but if they can do
Third in the
that,
country.
what
Third in the
is it?
country shooting. Third in the country shooting 44% from three so
Wow.
far this
Okay.
season.
I mean, they got three guys averaging 18 or greater. Silovich or whatever his name is, and Jefferson and Lipsy.
Yeah.
And I mean, our friend Sam Beard, who we both talked to a lot, he was saying, my hope is when Rick Barnes decides to retire, we could get TJ Otzelberger as the coach. I was like, man, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would be the grand slam. That would be the you make a call and make him say no guy. I think in the Tennessee tier of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it sure feels to me now, I mean, what we saw there, I know it's just one game, small sample, but well-coached team, et cetera. I mean, they feel like they're another one you can add into the conversation as Final Four worthy, probably, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with Houston not looking great at this point in the season, I'm not sure I wouldn't put them as the favorite to win the Big 12 at this point. So very impressive, and it's the offensive stuff. I mean, they're always good defensively. That's always kind of their calling card for their offense to be shooting it as well as it is. And I give a lot of credit. I think it's been really cool to see Timmy and Lipsy be as good as he was, because he had a really disappointing year. And I know last year, I know injuries were a part of that, but he was a guy that I believe 2 years ago was like an all first or second team all Big 12 guy, and he just was not very good last year. A guy that's from Ames, so a hometown kid, and he's been much more playing like that all around point guard who's one of the best in the country here early this season, and that's been a big part of their success, and just cool to see for a guy that struggled last year and sticking it out and finding some success.
Yeah. So by way of that Purdue loss, we mentioned it earlier, Arizona became the new number one team in college basketball, at least on the AP poll. I think Michigan's number one on coaches. And they're proven worthy of it. Auburn came out and visited them on Saturday, and Arizona proceeded to crush them. They won by nearly 30. And you said it earlier, they've got it all right now. I mean, they're big up front. They have great guard play. I think I'm very keen on seeing what happens this weekend when they go to Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama, because I think that's really going to be they've passed all their tests so far, right? UConn, Florida,
Yeah.
I mean, they're
UCLA.
playing UCLA. I mean, they're playing fantastic ball, Ryan.
Yeah, and I think the UConn wins one that, and I know UConn's a little banged up for that game, but a win that's aging really, really nicely. I was at a game is in Birmingham, not Tuscaloosa, so maybe slightly easier matchup, but still
Sure.
a very, very tough test, and it feels like a real styles make fights type of game. Two teams that want to play very, very differently, and so it'll be interesting to see who can kind of dictate less tempo and more just shot selection because of how they want to play. And it's not that Arizona shoots it poorly from three, because that's not really the case. They shoot it decently, but there's 365 teams in Division I college basketball. Bob, I want to see if we can get a guess from you. What percentage, from a rank standpoint, nationally? Well, I'll just tell you the number: 20% of their points come from 3-point range. Where do you think that ranks out of 365 nationally?
I would say it's greater than 300.
356.
Oh my God.
Of 365. So there's 9 teams scoring a lesser percentage of their points from 3-point line than Arizona. So I think anytime, at least for me, anytime a number like that's so drastic, you wonder if it has to change, or if it can.
Yeah.
One, if it'll just naturally change as you get a larger sample size, and two, if they keep playing that way, can they continue to be as effective? But I mean, you look at the teams that they've beaten, it's not like they're beating up on nobodies. Florida's got a great front court. UConn has a great front court, though. Again, you had the Terrace Reed injury, if I'm not mistaken. He didn't play in that game. So will be really interesting to see. And certainly you talk about a team that, if Alabama has a weakness, it's probably their ability to defend the rim and rebound. And it feels like Arizona could really exploit that on Saturday night.
Yeah. You mentioned Florida and UConn. Let's talk about them for a second, because they just played a game last night at the Garden. UConn prevails. What I'd say about Florida, the defending champs, man, they're not avoiding anyone. They're taking on all comers, but they can't seem to beat them. They are currently now 5-4. Their losses are Arizona, Duke, and UConn, and TCU, who I think is a pretty good team. They have no top 30 wins under their belt. But that said, these last couple of games, they lost to Duke, they lost to UConn, but feels like they were right there. Feels like the guard play is rounding into shape, specifically Xavier Lee. We know how good their bigs are. You know, the 5-4 record's a little deceiving. I think they're going to be fine come conference time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would probably, again, like I said, and maybe I'm too high on Vanderbilt. I'd have Alabama and Vanderbilt in that first group, but you know, I'd have as much confidence in Florida as anybody else behind those two. So you're right. I mean, even you go back to Arizona, that was a 6-point loss.
Yeah.
You know, 3 or 4 losses are against top 10 teams, and all of them were games that they were in and could have won. So I know it probably has to be really frustrating for Florida because, if I'm not mistaken, they don't really play anybody until SEC play starts. So they've missed that opportunity to get kind of a marquee win. But
right,
you know, they're still really good. I do wonder about the ceiling. Even Xavier Lee, like you said, played a lot better last night, but still just not in love with their backcourt, and it doesn't feel like they have a ton of other options. So to me, they feel like a real high floor team and a team that's going to win a lot of games. But you know, I'm just not sure. Final Four national championship type contender, I'm ready to buy in. I think I need to see Lee and Fland, which I don't know if you were watching at this exact moment. It was in the second half. I can't remember what time. Fland, I thought almost shattered the backboard on a 3-point attempt last night.
Yes.
That was one of the fastest velocities I'd ever seen on a jump shot before, as it drilled the backboard.
Yeah, no, I did see that. I was struck by Lee's bag, man. He was breaking some ankles out there, like just and UConn's obviously good defensively, but I mean they were having a little trouble with him, which was weird to see, honestly.
Yeah, he's starting to look a lot more comfortable with the athleticism. I think one of the last times we talked about Ford on here, like he was having terrible turnover problems at that rate, and then it's kind of one of those things you wonder. Kid from Princeton, like, is this the athleticism at this level just too much for him? And he's really toned that down the last couple games against good competition in Duke and UConn. And the shot's probably still not exactly where you'd want it to be, but to me that feels more likely to round into form and not be a super long-term issue as compared to the taking turnovers and the athleticism aspect.
And the last thing I'll say about Florida is I think back to the first time Tennessee played Florida last season in Gainesville, and that was not memorable.
Fun game.
Yeah. But Thomas Houck, I think about him, and I think about where he's come in about a year's time, and it's incredible. I mean, he was really good, particularly late in the season last year, but now all of a sudden, man, here's a kid who decided he was coming back for another year, and man, he is going to, I think, rocket up the draft boards eventually. After all these great freshmen, he's going to be somebody an NBA team will like.
Yeah, I would think he would. I mean, I haven't been scouring the mock drafts. I would think he would be a lottery pick, a low-end lottery pick, if not a first-round pick, and just as versatile as a player that does a ton for him. And you know, it's kind of to like an extent of what you would hope it would look like for Nate Mint. I mean, they're different builds, but tall guys playing the 3 spot. They give you length on defense, and again, Mint's not as put together as Howe is, but rebounding, and you know, he's shooting 35% from 3, and that's what on a lot of attempts, and that's what kind of felt like a more realistic or I won't say floor for Nate Mint, but like that wasn't like an overly positive projection that he could shoot 35% from 3 this year. So that's where, you know, you kind of feel like you need him to get to for Tennessee's standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. Quickly about UConn, like we've been saying, they've been a little hobbled from time to time, whether it was Terrace Reed or Braylon Mullins. They're back pretty much to full strength, I believe, now, and just in time. They look really good. They have one more non-conference game with Texas, and then they roll into the Big East. And man, by the looks of the Big East, Ryan, I mean, short of St. John's, maybe Seton Hall, who's 9-1. I just don't see the Huskies getting much of a challenge in conference play. Like you said earlier, Creighton's down. Villanova, they're still figuring things out. I mean, UConn's going to be right there when it comes tournament time, man.
No doubt, and that was something I had on the list to talk about last week with Kevin Sweeney, and we just didn't have time to get to it. But yeah, I don't think the Big East is very good. I think to me, it feels like a 3-bid league, which I think they've been maybe twice in the last 6, 7, 8 years, but one of those years was, I believe, 24. It was 24, but UConn was a 1 seed, Marquette was a 2 seed, Creighton was a 3 seed, and so the teams that made the tournament were really good. It doesn't feel quite that way. I mean, UConn is really good. I'm a little less sure on St. John's, and if a third team makes it, it feels like they're going to be a bubble type team that
Yeah, I
sneaks
think
in.
so too.
It's and to me, what it boils down to is Big East West is not good this year. Creighton and Marquette have been consistent, good programs in recent years, and neither of those teams look like. I wouldn't put it past Creighton getting it together and making tournament, but at this point, neither of those teams look like tournament teams.
Yeah. Last one, man, Duke. This game happened after we did our last show. Impressive road win against Michigan State. Michigan State was 7th at the time. They're now number 9. They didn't get penalized too much for losing that game to Duke. But Duke has one more big test before ACC play. That's against number 16 Texas Tech. It's simple. And, man, I got to say, Shire impressed me in the Michigan State game because we've talked about this. We talked about it with Sweeney. If you're able to keep Cam Boozer on the floor, they're going to be a problem for any team. But what happens if he can't be on the floor? And he did have some foul trouble against Michigan State. Shire trusted him, kept him on the floor, and it worked itself out. And that just makes me impressed with Shire, but also that much more impressed with Cam Boozer, his ability to play in control like that.
100%. I'm not sure anyone in the country knows who they are more than Duke does, and knows the roles that everybody feels. And they have general roster continuity as much as you can have in this sport, this day and age. I think along with Tennessee, they might have been the only Power 5 team that didn't lose a player to the transfer portal. But obviously, I mean, Boozer, your best player is a true freshman, and Dame Star is a starter who's a true freshman. So there's new pieces that they're sliding into, and they just seem like they understand each other as a team and play cohesively and know what each player needs to do to win on any given night. And I think that's a huge testament to John Shire. I think it's a huge testament to Cameron Boozer's consistency as a true freshman, right out the bat. But they feel like the slow and steady of the, there's, I don't know, 6 teams you would say feel like they're at the top of the sport on any given day, could be the best team. And they just feel like the most steady of that group right now.
It makes you wonder too, how much we'd be paying even more attention to Caden Boozer if his brother wasn't on the floor with him, because I think Caden's pretty good too, but he gets kind of overshadowed by how good Cam is.
Yeah, and he's the guy that's, he didn't do much. I don't think he even really played a ton in that Tennessee game, but it feels like his role is starting to expand as the season goes on.
Yeah.
And, you have more of those typical inconsistencies you expect with a freshman, unlike his brother, but, a guy that's a good player. And to me, we're looking way too far ahead of things now, but a guy that I'll be interested to see if he comes back for another year, because he feels like a guy that with an offseason and a year of experience under his belt could be a true superstar in his sophomore season.
Yep. And then you mentioned these guys earlier. We'll put a bow on the look around the country, but number 2, Michigan, they haven't skipped a beat since Vegas. They continue to essentially humiliate teams. They beat Rutgers by 41. They beat Villanova last night by 28. I mean, they are a wagon right now.
They lost the second half last night against Villanova.
Did they really? I didn't.
They were up by 30 at halftime.
Yeah,
it's crazy. And I saw somebody say this, and apologies to them because I forget who it was, but I just saw it last night in passing on Twitter. But man, you got to be kicking yourself if you're Wake Forest and TCU. It felt like they had a chance to get them. Yeah, especially Wake Forest, who was up late in that game, a chance to get them before they put everything together. And I'm sure it won't look like it has the last 4 games, last 5 games, I guess, at this point, the rest of the season. But it's hard to imagine a world where Michigan's not in the top 5 for most of the year and in a really good spot to earn a 1 seed.
No doubt. So looking ahead, this is just, business as usual in college basketball. The Vols are not playing this week. They've been in exams and everything. Probably not bad for them to get a little break as we get ready for that Louisville game, but there's a bunch of big games. It's like a broken record this week. We had a few last night. Thursday night. This game interests me. Number 4, Iowa State hosting New Look, Iowa, Ben McCollum and company. I think that, it's an in-state rivalry game first and foremost, but I think that's going to be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if Iowa can make that one, an interesting game.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, they're a team that, like you said, with McCollum, has been exciting and very much a new look team. They've played a handful of pretty good non-conference games,
Yeah.
but it's not like they've played a ton, and they kind of laid a dud, I thought, in their Big Ten opener against Michigan State. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond, and obviously in a big-time rivalry game.
No doubt. Texas traveling to UConn on Friday, but Saturday is loaded. It starts early with Arkansas at Texas Tech. A game I'm actually kind of interested in because they're going to be coming our way next week. Memphis going to Louisville to take on the number 11 Cardinals. That's an old Metro Conference USA game. That all probably predates you even being alive, Ryan. But that's
I didn't know the term Metro Conference. I knew the Conference USA. I can remember that a little bit, but
yeah,
Metro Conference days.
It used to be the Metro 7 is what they called it. And that was back when I was pretty young, so that's been a while. But that used to be a heated rivalry, man. Memphis and Louisville. So not sure it's going to be much of a rivalry Saturday. Louisville looks much better than Memphis, but Nebraska, I didn't know Nebraska's ranked, Ryan. I didn't catch that. They're ranked 23rd. They'll be going to take on Illinois, who we know all too well. We've talked about them. Should be a good test for Nebraska to see if they're for real.
Nebraska, longest winning streak in the country right now.
Nice.
I believe it goes back to, I can't remember the name of it, that fake tournament in Las Vegas that like Big Ten teams played in.
Yeah.
I think they won that tournament. I think it goes back to that. I can't remember what name of it was. They were promoting it when I was in Vegas for Players Era, and I was like, oh, yeah, I completely forgot that this was a thing. But it goes back all the way there. So Nebraska, longest winning streak in the country.
Yeah. North Carolina State's hosting Kansas, number 19 Kansas. See if Will Wade can work some magic. From afar, you think he's doing so far kind of what you expected at NC State, better, but not quite there yet?
Yeah, I think I got maybe a little ahead of myself with them. I like their roster a lot from just a talent standpoint, and I'm trying to remember who it was they played early. They look good in a game early this season against someone pretty confident, but they've struggled a little bit as late. So maybe not quite to what I expected, but I'd probably put that more on me. I was probably higher on the pack than most were. So it's not like they're at a shocking spot or anything like that.
Yeah. And then get your naps in because late night Saturday night, well, not too late, at 9:30, I think it is, Arizona and Alabama in Birmingham, number 1 versus number 12 should be a good one. And then definitely late night, I think 11:30, number 25 UCLA at what do they call it? The Kennel against number 8 Gonzaga. Some good Saturday night games for sure.
Yeah, and it's St. Mary's is good, so I'll stop short of saying last test for Gonzaga, but they win this one. They could run the table the rest of the way. St. Mary's twice. I think they play Oregon, but Oregon's not any good. One more, big game and out of conference play. So good late test and a good late non-conference test for Gonzaga, and might be the last game you watch or you see much from them until we cycle back into March.
Yep. Well, quick reminder as we wrap that number 11 Louisville takes on number 20 Tennessee. That's set for Tuesday night at Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center, 7 p.m. on ESPN. Louisville ranks 10th nationally in points scored per game, 3rd nationally in 3-point field goals made per game, 4th in offensive efficiency in Ken Palm. This goes without saying, Ryan. You talked about it earlier, the ability for the Vols to handle, the perimeter spacing, from a defensive perspective, et cetera. They're going to get tested in every way in this game, I think.
No doubt. And, a little bit of, I should go back to last year when Tennessee, I believe, had lost 2 straight games. I think it was Auburn and Kentucky when Florida came in and Kai Ziegler was out, Igor Milicic was out, and it was just an inexplicable blowout win for Tennessee. And
yes,
they talked about it that was a real pride win for the program and one of the wins they've been most proud of over the last couple of years. And hopefully for Tennessee, we don't figure out that Jacoby Gillespie and Jalen Carey are going to be out in that game or something like that. But it does feel very much like a big pride game, and a game where on your home court, Tennessee should be 125% effort. Louisville, if they can take care of business this weekend, will be unbeaten and probably a little bit less desperate. A game that I think a lot of the college basketball stars, I call them college basketball games, where if you don't follow the sport closely, you might say a result's kind of inexplicable. It could be a little bit of that, but I think a lot of stuff points to Tennessee in that game, and certainly a huge game for Tennessee, a game, as we've outlined, they needed to get.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that does it for this week. For all of you out there watching and listening, thank you for that. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Rim Runner. We'll be sure to recap that pivotal game for the Vols. We'll look ahead to conference play because it's just around the corner. Also break down all the other action going on around the SEC and the country as teams begin to transition in their own conferences into in-conference play. Now, again, as a reminder, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube on the Rocky Top Insider channel. Download our podcast wherever you listen to pods, if that's the way you're consuming the show. Many thanks to all of you out there who make the time to check our show out. Ryan, as always, man, thank you to you. Looking forward to talking to you next time, as always.
Yeah, fun episode, and never really any shortage of stuff to get into as we get deeper and deeper into the heart of the season.
Yeah, and here's hoping we're talking about a get-right win for Tennessee next week. We'll see, but hope you have a great rest of the week. And for you out there listening and watching, hope you have a great rest of your week and weekend, and we'll see you next time on the RTI Rim Runner.